History remembers her as a queen who changed the world forever. But history forgot the nightmare that killed her, the infection that ate her alive in silence, while the court pretended nothing was wrong. Tonight you're going to hear the truth they buried for more than 500 years. A story of power, pain, and a secret so disturbing it was erased from the royal records. She was not born a legend. Isabella entered the world as a fragile princess in a fractured kingdom, a girl raised in shadows while powerful men plotted over the future of Spain. No one could have imagined that this quiet child would one day unify a nation and ignite an empire that stretched across oceans. Spain in her youth was not one country, but a broken collection of rival kingdoms, each ruled by ambition, betrayal, and blood. Murder, rebellion, and marriage alliances determined survival, and Isabella learned quickly that a crown was never worn in peace, only in constant danger. Forced into political games at an early age, she was promised in marriage more than once like a bargaining object. Each proposal meant a shift of power, and each refusal placed her life in greater danger, as enemies gathered quietly around her name. But Isabella was not the obedient piece they expected. Against all pressure, she chose her own husband, Ferdinand of Aragon, a decision that would shake Europe and plant the seeds of a new world empire. Their marriage was not romance. It was war disguised as unity. Together, their joined crowns of Castile and Aragon formed the backbone of what would become modern Spain. With this union, Isabella stepped beyond princes and became a force, her mind sharper than most men born to thrones. She began her reign surrounded by enemies who questioned her authority because she was a woman. Nobles whispered behind tapestries, foreign rulers watched closely, and even her own advisors wondered if she would falter beneath the weight of power. Instead, she hardened. Her gaze became iron, her decisions grew ruthless. She restructured armies, rebuilt finances, and strengthened royal control in ways Spain had never seen. Order was enforced with calculation, and traitors vanished from memory. It was under her command that Granada, the final Muslim stronghold in Iberia, fell in 1492 after centuries of conflict. With that victory, Isabella was hailed as a defender of Christianity, a chosen ruler blessed by God, at least in the eyes of Europe. In that same year, she approved the dangerous journey of Christopher Columbus, unknowingly opening the door to colonization, conquest, and unimaginable suffering across entire continents. Her signature changed the fate of the world forever. But while she shaped history on maps and oceans, a much darker transformation was happening inside her own body. One that no army, no priest, no doctor could stop. Behind the palace walls, Isabella's body was paying the price of endless pregnancies, miscarriages, fasting, and years of unrelenting stress. Her organs were weakening long before the court dared to notice. She treated her own pain as divine punishment, fasting harder, praying longer, forcing herself to stay awake through council meetings even when her vision blurred and her hands trembled with weakness. At first, it was only a faint discomfort low in her abdomen, a heavy sensation that bloomed after long days, then faded by morning. She ignored it, as rulers are taught to ignore all signs of human weakness. Then came the fevers, unpredictable and cruel. Her ladies noticed how often she asked for cool cloths, how the sweat dampened her hairline, how her lips lost their natural color. Still, Isabella refused rest. She ruled from a chair, from her bed, from prayer chambers, even when pain twisted her posture and her breath grew shallow. Court physicians blamed imbalanced humors. They opened veins to bleed her, pressed bitter herbs to her lips, wrapped her in soaking cloths. Each treatment weakened her further, feeding the fire beneath her skin. Inside her, an unseen enemy was growing. A deep infection tightening around her womb, her ovaries, her bowels, a silent prison forming, poisoning her blood with every passing day. Meanwhile, tragedy struck her family. Her beloved son and heir died, then her daughter, then her grandson. One by one, the future she had carefully shaped collapsed in front of her eyes. Grief fused with illness, accelerating her decline. Pain and heartbreak twisted into one endless suffering locked within her abdomen, burning, swelling, spreading like invisible rot. By 1503, walking became an act of torment. Servants supported her weight as she shuffled through corridors once filled with her powerful stride. Her once commanding voice dropped into fragile whispers. At night, alone with her agony, she pressed her hands against her stomach, feeling something hard beneath the flesh, something wrong, something expanding where life once grew. She told no one the truth of her fear, not priests, not Ferdinand, not even her closest ladies. If they knew, they would see her not as a queen, but a dying woman. And in her world, a dying queen was more dangerous than any enemy army. By early 1504, her condition darkened. Waves of nausea crippled her. Her abdomen grew tender, swollen beneath heavy gowns. Even light touch sent spears of pain through her spine. There were nights when a sharp internal pain racked her so violently she cried out into the silence, her voice echoing through cold stone halls as guards froze in terror outside her door. She claimed it was only a cramp, a passing weakness. But inside, she felt something shift, as if a hidden wound had split open and released something foul into her body. Her fever spiked higher. Her skin turned hot, then cold, then hot again. Shivers seized her frame like unseen claws as toxins explored her bloodstream. The court began to whisper. Was the queen dying? Who would rule? Would Spain fracture again into chaos? But Isabella refused to surrender authority. Even half delirious, she demanded her scribes bring documents. She whispered orders through clenched teeth, shaping the future even as death approached. She rewrote her will. She named her unstable daughter Joanna as rightful heir to Castile. She ordered unity at any cost. Her trembling hand signed treacherous history into ink. Every word cost her breath. Every command carved deeper into her failing strength. And still, the infection spread, silent, relentless, consuming her from the inside. The woman who had conquered kingdoms was now being conquered by something far smaller than a blade, but far more unforgiving than war. And this was only the beginning of her suffering. By late 1504, the palace no longer felt like a home. It had turned into a sick room disguised with gold, incense barely strong enough to mask the faint, sour scent of decay following her through the corridors. Those who stood close to the queen noticed it first, a strange, metallic odor that clung to her chambers. Something rotting, hidden, growing stronger with every passing day. It was not the stench of sweat or illness alone. It was the smell of tissue dying inside a living body. Her gowns had to be loosened. The pressure inside her abdomen had become unbearable, swelling her belly unnaturally, as if she carried a life that was not life at all. Each step sent waves of agony through her hips and spine. Sometimes her vision blackened at the edges, and she clung to walls painted with scenes of glory she could no longer admire. Doctors finally grew frightened. They spoke in hushed Latin, fearing the walls themselves might repeat their words. Some whispered of an internal corruption, others murmured of tumors, of festering wounds that could not be seen or reached. They had no tools, no cure, only superstition. Priests were summoned in numbers greater than physicians. Holy water was sprinkled, prayers were chanted late into the night. But the God she had served so fiercely remained silent. Isabella, once called the Catholic Queen, began to wonder if her body was her final battlefield, and if this was her punishment for the blood she had spilled in his name. She remembered the Jews expelled from Spain, the Muslims forced to convert or flee, the fires of the Inquisition burning in public squares under her command. Now it felt as though those flames had found their way back to her, burning her slowly from the inside. At night she drifted in and out of consciousness, trapped between dreams and fever-fueled visions. She saw faces long buried, children she had lost, lands conquered in her name, soaked in blood. Sometimes she woke screaming, convinced something was moving within her, crawling, twisting beneath her ribs, gnawing deeper with every breath. Her attendants claimed it was delirium, but Isabella knew better. Whatever lived inside her was real. One evening she collapsed while praying. Her body folded like damp cloth on cold stone, her breath rattling, lips turning the color of bruised fruit. They carried her to her bed, though even silk sheets felt like rough sand against inflamed skin. Pus began to seep through unseen internal channels, poisoning her blood. Her body fought back with violent fevers, then surrendered in freezing waves. No one dared to open her to see the truth. A queen was sacred, even in death. Her hair thinned, her face hollowed. The powerful jaw that once commanded armies softened into fragile bone barely covered by fading flesh. The court no longer recognized the woman who had shaped the world. Only Ferdinand remained at her side, though even he could not hide the fear behind his tired eyes. He had lost a partner, a strategist, a weapon. Now he sat beside a dying woman, listening to the slow, wet sound of her labored breathing. In whispered moments of clarity, Isabella confessed her regrets. She spoke of the people she had hurt, the children she had lost, the mercy she had never learned to give. Tears slid down her gaunt cheeks, vanished into pillows embroidered with symbols of power she could no longer wield. Outside her chambers, Spain waited in silence. Kings do not often beg. Queens do not often tremble. But Isabella did both, now reduced to a mortal body betrayed by itself. On November 26, 1504, in the dimness of her chamber at Medina del Campo, the struggle ended. Her body released a final breath, and the thing that had been killing her finally grew quiet. A deep pelvic infection, likely born from years of complicated pregnancies and untreated internal injuries, had consumed her organs. Rot had replaced life. Poison had replaced blood. The truth was carefully hidden. No royal record mentioned the grotesque details. No chronicler dared describe the true horror of her final months. Instead, history wrote, Queen Isabella died peacefully, a beautiful lie to cover an unbearable reality. Behind closed doors, attendants scrubbed the floors where she had bled. They burned her bedding. They sealed the windows to keep the stench of death from escaping into legend. Her body was dressed in royal garments and presented to the world as serene, untouched, holy. But royalty could not stop decay. During the journey to Granada, where she had asked to be buried, observers noticed the growing odor surrounding the coffin. Heat accelerated what had begun long before death. Even sealed in wood and draped in prayer, her body continued its final betrayal. The flesh of a queen returned to the earth like that of any sinner. And yet her legacy did not die with her. Empires continued to rise from her decisions. Oceans were crossed, civilizations were shattered. Gold and blood spilled in rivers across new continents. All set into motion by a woman who, in the end, could not even conquer her own failing body. History paints her as a hero, others call her a villain. But perhaps the truth lies somewhere darker, inside a palace bedroom, soaked in silence, where the most powerful woman in the world was consumed slowly by something no crown could command. A reminder that time and decay bow to no one. Not even a queen? The blade had done its work, but the real battle did not end on that table. When the echoes of the king's scream finally died inside the stone walls of Versailles, a terrifying silence followed. Every servant, every priest, every noble wondered the same thing in secret. Did we just watch the end of a king? Or the beginning of a ghost? The surgeons stood frozen, hands stained, breath trembling. No one dared look at the Sun King's face. For long seconds, Louis XIV did not move. No commands, no curses. No royal voice, only candlelight flickering like it too was afraid. Then a breath, shallow, fragile, but alive. A whispered prayer left the lips of one priest. Others followed. The chamber filled with murmured gratitude as if heaven itself had intervened in the final second. But survival was only the first test. The recovery would be worse than the operation. Louis was forbidden to move. He lay hidden behind closed doors while France continued breathing outside without him. Ministers signed papers in silence. Messengers lowered their eyes. The country functioned on the illusion that its sun was still shining. But behind the curtains of silk, the king rotted and healed at the same time. Days passed, then weeks. Fever came and went like invading armies. Some nights he raved, not as a king, but as a man. He spoke of fire, of tunnels, of darkness beneath the palace floors, of whispers crawling from the walls. The court physicians waited for the infection to reclaim its prize. It never did. Against logic, against history, against death itself, Louis XIV inched his way back from the edge, a step, a breath, a sitting motion without agony. The miracle spread through the palace before he even returned to court. The king is healing. The king is chosen. The king cannot be killed. Those whispers transformed into legend overnight. When Louis finally walked into the Hall of Mirrors again, the entire court collapsed into bowing bodies. Not because he commanded them, but because they were staring at a living resurrection. They weren't bowing to a man anymore. They were kneeling to something that had defied nature. His face had changed, older, sharper, yet untouchable. The pain had carved something new into him, a cold clarity. From that moment forward, Louis ruled harder, tighter, more absolutely than ever before. If death could not bend him, then certainly men could not. Versailles became even more controlled, even more obsessed with perfection. Behind walls of gold and chandeliers, one rule echoed through the palace: weakness would never again touch the throne. But the body remembers what the crown tries to forget. Though healed, Louis was never the same. He walked slower. He sat carefully. His nights grew shorter. His silence grew longer. The same man who once danced for hours now stood still, watching life as if from behind glass. Power kept him alive. Fear kept him sharp. Years passed. The world changed. Wars were fought. Palaces rose. Enemies fell. New generations were born in the brightness of his name. Most had no idea just how close their world had once come to crumbling because of a wound hidden beneath royal silk. And that was the true victory of the court. They erased the story. No official portrait showed his suffering. No grand history recorded his shame. No monument whispered his pain. The greatest king in Europe had nearly been defeated by his own flesh. And yet history chose to remember only the crown, never the wound beneath it. Louis XIV would live for decades after that day. He would become the longest ruling monarch in European history. He would outlast rivals, nations, even his own children. But if you study his later paintings closely, you can see it. Not the gold, not the glory, the shadow. A darkness behind the eyes, a memory that never left him. He had looked into the void that day on the table, and it had looked back. In his final years, Louis became quiet, reflective, surrounded by priests instead of generals, by prayer instead of music. The man who once called himself the sun now lived in constant awareness of the night. When death finally did come for him in 1715, there was no scream, no struggle. Only a king who had already met the darkness once before, now greeting it like an old companion. But the secret of that room, of that blade, of that hidden tunnel within royal flesh, remained buried beneath Versailles. Buried beneath lies, buried beneath legacy, until now. Because history is not just crowns and wars and palaces. History is bodies. History is pain. History is the truth no one wants to remember. And Louis XIV, the most powerful man in the world, was almost erased by the one enemy he could never command: his own silence.